So today I just wanted to come on and as part of World Breastfeeding Week, chat a little bit about some tips that we found helpful to try and establish breastfeeding in our premature baby on the neonatal unit. So obviously each baby is different, but this is just what we found worked for us. So just a bit of a background that you probably already know, but I just thought might be helpful is just to bear in mind that depending when they're born and how premature they are, they may not even have the kind of skills yet to be able to breastfeed even if you wanted to. So babies kind of don't learn how to suck properly until they're about 28 weeks in the womb. Now obviously if they've come earlier, then they're not going to be able to do it. And they can't coordinate sucking and breathing and swallowing until they're at least 34 weeks. So again, just something to bear in mind when you're trying to establish breastfeeding. Before they can physically do it though, there's loads that can be done to try and help them breastfeed or learn to breastfeed later on. And this is all really positive things. So things that we did was lots of skin to skin. So Poppy would always come out for cuddles for as long as she could tolerate, keeping an eye on her monitor. But she really enjoyed most of the time coming out for cuddles. So we did lots of skin to skin. The other thing that we did was lots of positive touch around her mouth. So obviously when they're born early, they're having tubes in their mouth, they're being fed through a tube, they're having masks, they've constantly got people touching their mouths, and most of it's not positive. So what we would do is, as she got a bit bigger and as our nurses were happy and thought that it was safe, we would put a little bit of breast milk on like a cotton wool and just put it around her mouth so that it was something positive for her. And also we would, when she was a bit older, we would put the little cotton tip in her mouth and let her try and practice sucking, and she really enjoyed that, getting a little bit of breast milk. And again, when she was having like blood tests done or the heel pricks done, if we were there and if the nurses were able to, then again we would give her a little bit of breast milk as like a soother, and so that was lots of positive touch around her mouth. And then when she got a little bit older, she started rooting. So when she was having skin to skin on me, she would like flip herself sideways and try and kind of sit more towards my breast. And then when she was even a bit more older, you could see that she wanted to start just exploring. So, and that's why it's good if you're as kind of topless as you can be, so that they can explore. So just being able to have the baby sit near the nipple, smell the milk, kind of, some of them will lick the area or try and latch, even if they're too small, just let them explore. And that's all really positive touch way before they can even breastfeed. So that's like the very beginnings. Once they're over about 34 weeks and are big enough, because they need to have like the strength in their cheeks to suck and the strength in their neck and their head to hold themselves in the right position. So, and they don't go by dates. So just once they're big enough and they've kind of worked out the whole kind of sucking, swallowing, then you can try and get them to suck at the breast. And it's not going to be what's called a nutritious kind of a nutritive sucking. So they're not probably actually going to be strong enough to take any milk, but they'll enjoy practicing. Or they'll get really frustrated because they can't do it properly yet, which is what Poppy did, of course. But yeah, so that's really positive though, again, for them to be able to pretend latch and to have a go. They're not going to get any milk, and if they do, they always look a bit surprised, but so that's really good. And then the next step is if you and the nurses think that they're showing signs that they actually want to properly feed at the breast, and you'll see them rooting or turning their head when they get to the breast. And the best way to do that is actually to have pumped beforehand, so that they don't get a massive letdown and are trying to latch onto kind of a really full breast. So if you've got a relatively empty breast, then that tends to help them. And then again, they'll have a practice and probably get some milk. The next step is going to be actually feeding them, and that's when they latch and properly get milk and they're strong enough and they've kind of got the swallowing, breathing, sucking all down to a T, and then they'll properly suck and get some milk. to begin with, they won't last for a full feed. They're not going to suddenly be taking a full feed because they're just too little. But as they get bigger, they'll take more and more. And that's when you step in. And depending where you are, each unit will do it differently. So at the first hospital we were in, they would just ask and say, how do you think she went? Did she feed for I think they tended to have rules where it was like, if they fed for 20 minutes, they don't need a top up at all. If they fed for 10 minutes, then they need to have half a feed still through their NG tube, because they're not going to be getting, to begin with, a full feed from the breast. And so you still need to be topping them up through their tubes, otherwise they'd lose weight. But gradually the balance of kind of feeding through a tube versus breastfeeding is going to shift towards breastfeeding, and that's really positive. And it may take a really long time. Each baby does it at their own pace, as you'll know if you're a mum on the neonatal unit, and you'll also know that they'll be doing really well, and then they'll maybe take a step back for a couple of days if they get a bit tired, and that's fine. Just take your time and have patience and enjoy it. They're learning and you're learning. And then the last step is kind of about really trying to get a bit of a normal breastfeeding. Sorry, I'm fiddling with the watch charger. Stop. A normal breastfeeding relationship going, as normal as you can be whilst you're in hospital. And so once we moved out of the more high dependency areas of the hospital and into more of the special care, then actually I pushed really hard to be able to try and feed Poppy on demand, because once you're home, babies don't watch the clock. They don't do 3-hourly feeds and 2-hourly feeds. So I tried to be there as much as I could through the day and just fed Poppy when she showed signs. And that was really good for my supply, and also really good for Poppy to kind of learn to breastfeed on demand. And again, when they're first breastfeeding, you need to still be pumping, because obviously if they only take a little bit, then your milk supply will drop if that's all that you empty your breasts with. So you need to be doing top-up pumping, which is really hardcore. I know a lot of mums, we found that bit really difficult because we kind of had to pump a little bit beforehand, then do the feed, then pump a bit after, and it's really busy. It's actually busier than when they're tiny. But once you flip onto feeding on demand, then it's brilliant. You don't need to pump as much because you're kind of establishing how much milk supply you actually need. So that bit's really positive. And I'm saying it all as if it's easy breezy. I know it's not. We had a really tough time getting it established, and Poppy wanted to breastfeed actually from really early on. From kind of 32 weeks, she was constantly flipping herself sideways and trying to nuzzle in, but she was on breathing support, like big masks around her face, until she was term. And so despite wanting to, she couldn't latch because there was all this kind of mask and stuff in the way. So that was really upsetting and frustrating for her. Then she actually couldn't latch once all the kind of gubbins came off. She couldn't latch. We really struggled with her latch, and if I'm honest, I don't think I shouted enough. And if I was doing it again, I would have shouted more and asked for more help, because at 21 months we're still needing to use a nipple shield, which is fine. It is what it is, but I'm almost certain that this maybe could have been prevented if I shouted a bit more. So you've got to be your own advocate, and getting a latch is really difficult at the best of times, let alone when you're in the neonatal unit and you've got a tiny baby. So ask for support. It shouldn't be painful, and if it is, something's not right and you need to ask for help. And if the person that comes to help can't fix it, ask for another person, and you keep going till you find someone who can help you. And the other thing is that you may not be able to breastfeed. You may have to do bottles. And, we had to do bottles at night because I couldn't be there all day and then be there all night. And that's fine. And you may have to come home on bottles. And that's fine too. This isn't I want to say normal, but it's not, it's not the kind of most routine of journeys that we've had to get our babies home. And so we've just got to do what we've got to do. And any amount of breast milk that you can get into your babies, if that's what you want to do, is fantastic. And any amount of breastfeeding, if that's what you want to do, is fantastic. But yeah, do ask for help. And I think that's it. So I hope that's been helpful. I feel like it was a bit garbled, so I'm going to write it all down as well and pop it into a post. But hopefully any NICU mums out there, that's helpful. And I know it's difficult and I'm not trying to make light of it, but I think you're doing fantastically. All right, bye.